Manager, Mr. Ted Voorhees, Interim Police Chief Catherine Bryant, and Assistant Chief of Police Charles Kimball. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Voorhees.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming this afternoon. First thing I want to make very clear is how impressed I am with the Fayetteville Police Department's commitment to promoting public safety in Fayetteville. I've been here for just over 100 days or so as city manager, and Interim Chief Bryant is doing an outstanding job in working with this department to direct them in the most effective way possible. Nevertheless, within the last couple of weeks, there have been a few particularly high-profile incidents in Fayetteville that I think have caused the community to be talking a bit about the issue of crime and safety in Fayetteville. And so, it's really my intention to recognize this concern and provide the police department an opportunity to explain what they're doing to address the situation. I've been aware of some of the initiatives that the department has taken well before these recent incidents. I think it's making a difference, and I wanted to provide an opportunity to make sure that this was communicated to the public. So again, I'm very supportive of the department. I'm here to help in any way that I can to make sure they have the resources and support they need, and I'd like to now turn over the conversation to Chief Bryant so she can try and talk over this train whistle. Chief Bryant.
Would y'all prefer that I wait just a couple of seconds? I think the brunt of it's gone. Well, good afternoon. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Mr. Voorhees. The Fayetteville Police Department uses a data-driven approach for analyzing crime and identifying where resources need to be deployed. During the late summer months of this year, we identified an increase in gun-related calls for service. In addition to reviewing what has occurred, we also look ahead in anticipation of what may occur based on seasonal variations. Historically, we have experienced increases in calls for service and violence related to those calls during the holiday season. Using the information for what has occurred and what we anticipate, we coordinated and we implemented a gun violence task force on September 17th as a proactive measure to aggressively work on crime and calls for service where a gun is involved. The Fayetteville community has experienced a number of high-profile events over the past few weeks. These events are serious and, for obvious reasons, grab the attention of everyone who lives, works, shops, and travels throughout our community. The message the police department would like to share is, we are always concerned about crime, and it is good when the community takes notice and gets concerned as well. Overall, crime is down 3% for the year through November compared to last year. This number includes a 2% increase in Part 1 crime and a 9% decrease in Part 2 crimes. We experienced a small decrease in commercial robberies, but saw an increase in personal robberies. There's a slight decrease in homicide, but a small increase in serious assaults. What these statistics show is that overall crime rates are holding steady, and while there is not cause for alarm, we don't find these numbers acceptable. The Fayetteville Police Department has taken several steps to increase patrols and allocate resources to meet the anticipated seasonal call volume that we normally experience this time of year. Pre-planned holiday staffing put in place prior to the holidays includes additional officers assigned to patrol shifts during the holidays to be responsive to calls for service during peak call times. The mobile unit has been deployed during peak times for holiday shopping in high-volume shopping locations. We utilize shift overlap times to provide for additional officers during the overlap periods. Detectives are reporting to duty in uniform to increase the level of police presence in the community during the holiday season. And detective work schedules have been adjusted to provide for immediate response to facilitate follow-up investigations for serious crimes. Commanders have the flexibility to adjust work schedules so that the overlaps can occur during time frames when call volume is increased. The Gun Violence Task Force is an operational street unit that focuses on crimes and calls for service involving gun violence. Task Force partners include the District Attorney's Office, the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office, Alcohol Law Enforcement, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Cumberland County Schools, and probation and parole. Offenders do not work within boundaries, and it is critical that we communicate and share information with neighboring law enforcement agencies and work together to identify those offenders and make good arrests. Finally, before I call on Assistant Chief Kimball, who's going to talk a little bit more about the Gun Violence Task Force, I would like to encourage all members of the community to become actively involved in preventing crime, whether it is where you live, work, or where you travel in our community. We all have a responsibility to be vigilant and be aware of what is going on in our environment. We can be successful as a community when everyone joins in to prevent and reduce the opportunity for offenders to commit their crime. I'm going to call Assistant Chief Kimball up. He's going to talk about the Gun Violence Task Force for a few minutes, and then the three of us will take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Voorhees. As Chief Bryant said, around on September 17th of this year, we implemented the Gun Violence Task Force. It was a result of the commanders and the staff getting together, and we saw an increase of non-fatal shootings in the city. So we knew that we had the holidays coming upon us, and this was a good time to take steps to mitigate the crime that we knew what was happening and the violent crime that we saw. So we took resources from the department and we formed a task force. That task force was to deal with people who are possessing illegal firearms in the city. It was to go after the gun violence, the spike in gun violence that we saw. It was also to take those steps for us to look internally at some of the things that we were doing that tried to shore up cases and make sure the district attorney, that we bring them solid cases for prosecution also. It gave us a time to bring together our partnership with our federal partners. We sat down and we're trying to take some of the worst offenders off the street that use guns illegally here in Fayetteville. So that's kind of where we're at right now. It's evolving, and we think we have a good opportunity to make the Gun Violence Task Force a permanent fixture here at the Fayetteville Police Department. Right now, as we go through our staffing levels, we will probably, it looks like at this point, again, we're trying to work out the details. It will probably be commanded by a lieutenant. He will have 2 operational sergeants with him, with a staff of, I think, 12 officers. Those 12 officers will also have a complement of 2 intelligence officers also. I'll give you the exact number when we finish, but right now we're still trying to find out where they're going to fit and where we're going to get the officers from. But it'll probably be 12 to 14 officers.
The 5 shootings over the last week, separate shootings, what really prompted this presentation here today, the city manager raised some concerns at the city council meeting Monday night. Any idea what fueled that? Why this sudden spate of violent crimes in the city?
I mean, trying to get to the head of the offenders, I don't know, but I can tell you this, traditionally, we know that during what we call our holiday season, typically from November, from Thanksgiving until New Year's, we have an increase of crime. If you remember last Thanksgiving, there was an increase of crime around this time. We anticipate that, but what brought it on specifically, I don't know.
So it sounds like a deeper problem there, no matter how many patrols you add to the streets, that there's something going on in the homes of these lawbreakers. You look at these suspects, many of them come from broken homes. Mom's, dad's not there.
Well, we try to dissect the social aspects of what's going on, but we really have to focus on the law enforcement side of it. We try to do our best when it comes to things with crime prevention and working with CommuniCare and working with the school system and other partners that we have. But we had to take care of the crime immediately, and forming that task force, the Gun Violence Task Force, was one of the first steps. Now, we will have an educational piece of that. We're going to be forming some other people, again, bringing CommuniCare and DSS and the school system. They are partners in a task force, and they're partners we're going to reach out with, and maybe we can answer some of those questions.
Is this holiday crime increase something that's common across the area, across the board, or is it just common to Fayetteville?
I think traditionally what we see is a surge during the holidays, what we are not seeing is an increase in crime right now during Thanksgiving. Like we said, crime's holding pretty steady. We anticipate seasonal trends, seasonal increases, which means this year compared to last year, we're about on par with where we were. It means that following the holidays, crime tends to decrease a little bit. Again, it's another seasonal fluctuation that we deal with. So part of the message we'd like to get out is we see our crime holding fairly steady here, but still the level of the violence that we have seen in some of these incidents, it does cause concern. So we need to be proactive, and we need to talk about those things.
Let me just follow up briefly and say my experience is that it is common in many communities to see some holiday uptick in crime, but I want to also address the sort of question about deeper social issues. Complicated problem, and I think it necessitates analytical and partnership type solutions. So while I really wasn't prepared to get into the details today, I do want to say that I've had conversations with the judiciary, the sheriff's office, the district attorney's office, and local universities in anticipation of the idea of forming a community-wide partnership that would really be a steering committee to look at data. What we're talking about doing when we bring our new police chief in is kick that off sometime next year and do some data gathering and analysis to try to attack problems such as what is brought up community-wide. I mean, the law enforcement community, I think, is talking today here. Our police department is talking today about the partnerships they have on the suppression side of things. A bigger question is what are we doing on prevention and intervention, and that's where I think this community-wide partnership, using data, using analytical tools, and talking city, county, and our other nonprofit partners. What can we do in Fayetteville to step up our game? So that's something that we'll be doing as a long-term piece. Don't have a whole lot of details about it other than to say that I've gotten very positive reactions from the judiciary and from the sheriff and from the DA in my conversations so far within my first 100 days here in Fayetteville.
How can business owners kind of help your guys' cause or mission to keep the area safe during the holidays? Like what kind of advice would you give?
I missed part of your question. What was the first part?
Just how can business owners be helpful to your guys' cause during the holidays?
Probably one of the best tools that business owners can do is to have video in their businesses. Multiple cameras, multiple locations, inside, outside. We have a program at the Fayetteville Police Department called Video Done Right. That program has been very effective. We actually coordinated with some local convenience stores and have been able to increase the level of detail that we've been able to get from those videos, and then that in turn pushes that information out to the community. The community and the media are instrumental in helping us identify offenders, and that's probably one of the greatest ways that businesses can be proactive for preventing crime. The more people know there's cameras everywhere you go, maybe the less likely they are to go inside and commit a crime.
What do you tell the person, the civilian citizen out there who's worried about going to a gas station at night, filling up the car, doing any other kind of business, who's scared because of what, four shootings at gas stations, convenience stores in the last week?
I think when we talk about those types of things, we're talking about following some good crime prevention advice. Identifying your location, making sure you're going to a well-lighted location, paying attention to your surroundings and what's going on around you, not engaging in conversations with people you don't know, walking away from people when they do try to engage you in those conversations. There's a lot of crime prevention tips, and Gavin is also making those available, and we're going to have those for you, and those are the types of things that would be helpful.
Can we hear some specific examples of how the task force tries to tackle gun violence?
I think part of the strategy of the task force is the tools that they're using and how they're going about doing business, and frankly that's not something we want to educate everybody about.
You made some arrests, so you've talked to some of these suspects. Have they given you any kind of insight what motivated them to commit these crimes?
Again, another investigative tool that we have is talking to suspects when they are willing to talk to us and help us with those investigations, identifying partners and people who they've also committed crimes with. But that information, again, is very good intelligence information for us as for how we proceed further and investigate crime. From the most recent ones that we've seen, we have a few groups of people who, these aren't just independent robberies that are occurring. For example, the Taco Bell robberies that occurred, we've made arrest of one of those individuals. The other one has warrants that are being drawn or have been drawn. Those were 4 locations that were hit by one group.
Do you think this is gang related?
So that's absolutely one of the things that we look at to see if there is a nexus between gangs and the crime that's occurring. Sometimes that is what is in play here, but in some of these that may not be in play.
What is it about the holiday season that causes this kind of trend against the holidays as opposed to be a time for giving and cheer?
I agree. I wish we knew. I think if we knew the answer to that question, we would be able to really develop an approach to where we could attack it.
Are they robbing these stores because they're either not working, they're having financial issues, or they're in there to support their crack habit? Is that pretty much what the deal is?
Well, generally the motivation behind the robbery is to get the money. So whatever it is they need that money for, that's generally the intent behind the robbery.
Chief, has there been a correlation between increased drug crimes and these violent crimes that are happening? Can you see any correlation to them at all?
That would actually have to be a number that I'd have to look into. I'm really not prepared to respond to that.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Have we explored anything, you or I say we as a collective group, have we ever looked into what the root cause of these sort of things are? Like, where is it coming from? What is there some particular place you might could go to put your finger on? What is causing this thing to happen?
Well, we know in our community that we do have a lot of underlying factors. Those are social factors. So it could be in the home. It could be where somebody's living, what their needs are. It could be mental illness. It could be dependency on drugs or alcohol. There's many underlying causes and things that we know we're dealing with that contribute to the increase in these types of crimes.
Do we have any data at all on the dysfunctional families that appear to be, could it possibly be rooted back to that somewhere or other?
I would guess that there's a lot of that's related to it. That wouldn't necessarily be police data. That might be data that a social service agency might have.
Well, I'd say this because it appears to me that we used to have 2 parents raising children so far this year.
I don't have that number. Do you have them? No.
Say dozens, hundreds.
Well, I sure wouldn't want to say hundreds, not without looking at the numbers.
I would really like one of you to address this because the string of violence has certainly garnered a lot of publicity, news stories, and people outside Fayetteville may see all this media attention given to this violence and thing. Fayetteville is a violent place. And there's this image problem the city has suffered for a long time, just trying to overcome. What would you like to tell people who are watching this about Fayetteville? Is this a safe city?
I think in general, Fayetteville is a safe city. I think we do have some crime problems that we have to continue to address. Sometimes we can be our own worst enemy by the number of press releases that we disseminate, the number of crime information that we put out there. But the reality is we need the community's assistance in solving a lot of crimes. We need the media's assistance in getting this information out there. The more information you put out, the more likely that you're going to create a cause for alarm. Which is why I think it's important that we're here today to talk about the fact that while the last couple of weeks have been pretty high profile as far as the events that have occurred, overall that crime rate has maintained pretty stable throughout the month of November. But there has been a lot of attention placed on these crimes.
Well, they're shooting people. That's where attention is. It's not not like 30 years ago. That man remembers. And most of these people who live in Fayetteville, 30 years ago, they went in and they robbed the store, and they took the money and they left. Now, and this happened in one case, they just turned around and shot 2 of the clerks.
And that is something that's a little bit different more recently. Normally our crimes are more related to people who know people rather than a random act of violence. And 2 of the crimes within the last few weeks have been random acts of violence, yes.
So are you seeing a trend where the gun violence during the holiday season is going up?
I wouldn't say that. I'd have to look at those numbers. If we're not seeing...
So, you've got a case where a bank, Wells Fargo, on Walter Reed Drive, was robbed last week. I'm worried about that. That's my bank. That's where I found a little bit of money. But a customer jumped on the suspect. And I assume you're not saying that you want the community to be jumping on the suspects, but people are really getting very tired of these crimes.
Right.
Do you want customers or banks jumping on suspects?
No.
Would you be surprised if Laura didn't start doing this?
I would hope not. It's probably not the safest way to react to that type of situation, because that's a situation that could have gone bad very quickly.
Right. Yeah, and I've been told that. And I think that follow what Brian's saying is the people, like Mr. Voorhees said, he's been here for 2 months or 3 months, and he comes into this town and he brought this up, and that's pretty refreshing. Did the city council say anything to you to prompt that the other night? Like you?
So the question was, did the city council prompt me to bring up this topic, ask me any questions? The answer is no, they did not. They were pleased, though, I think, that I acknowledged the recent events and that caused us to take a little extra look at this and make sure that we were on the right path. I mentioned to them that, in fact, the police department had initiated the gun violence task force a couple of months ago, so they were ahead of the game. But solving crime is frustrating and challenging. There are many factors, and almost all of them are out of the control of the police department. It's a community problem. It's a social problem. We're going to continue to look for ways to develop new partnerships and build on those existing partnerships to take comprehensive solutions into the community. In the meantime, the police department is doing everything they can within their power to use the best investigative techniques to try to break down these groups. Why they exist, why all of a sudden a handful of incidents happen at the same time and create an extra level of fear, it's just not easy to know that. But the police will be looking into any links between any of them, and they'll ferret it out. I would note that they have a very high solve rate when it comes to murders, frankly, and any murders are unacceptable. But if you think that somehow you're going to get away with murder in Fayetteville, you need to think twice, because we've got an extremely high solve rate. Those people are going away, and we're taking the same aggressive approach to gun violence in general. So I'm very supportive of the department's efforts in that respect. When it comes to the long-range issue of why it happens and what can we do about it, we will continue, as I said, to look at the statistics and develop new partnerships, build on that, ask for the community to continue to step it up, and frankly, we're not going to shy away from this. We're going to stand tall. We're going to talk about it on a regular basis so we can track it and deal with it. I'll speak to the police chief search for 1 minute, and then it seems like we're probably about done. I'm very pleased with the police chief search process. It's involved a number of assessors from communities throughout the state, as well as representatives of Fayetteville. We put 6 highly qualified candidates through a process to assess their skills and abilities. I'm now down to the finalists. I'm in conversation with those finalists about bringing them back to Fayetteville for a chance to be exposed to the public for some get to know you conversations. When I get those details, I'll be sharing that, and I would expect to be able to share those details sometime within a week or so.
Is that from 6 to 2 to 3 or what?
I have 6, and I'll narrow it to a smaller group, and then I'll share that at that time.